are the best in the world at what they do. They drive the world's fastest race boats. They have spent years, perhaps decades, working their way up through the ranks of the American Powerboat Association, preparing for the day they would drive the ultimate race boat, an unlimited hydroplane. Preparing for this day, the day they will race for the Gold Cup. Welcome to ESPN Speed World coverage of the Ralph's UHRA Thunder Tour 1998, presented by Las Vegas. Coming to you from the APBA Gold Cup on the Detroit River in Detroit, Michigan. On a perfect sunny weekend here in Detroit for the biggest event on the tour. Hello and welcome to Detroit. I'm John Nicholson. You know, when it comes to unlimited hydroplane racing, this is as prestigious as it gets. It's the Super Bowl, the Final Four, the Kentucky Derby, all rolled into one. You ask any racing team, if you can only win one race, which one would it be? This is it, the Gold Cup. One of the big stories here this year is a local guy who lost his ride, but he's got one this weekend. Let's go to Steve Montgomery with more on that.
John, Mark Tate is indeed the pride of Canton, Michigan, having won the Gold Cup twice in 1991 and 94 right here on this Detroit River, driving for the late Steve Woomer. But he started this week as a spectator. Fred Leland, seeing him in the pits, knowing he had an extra Pico American Dream, put the two together. Suddenly, Mark Tate has a chance for a third Gold Cup.
We do indeed have beautiful weather here this weekend. Temperatures in the 80s, a bit breezy. The event's been moved back 6 weeks to get this better weather because of how it was the last couple of years. Last year, 40s, rainy, just pretty awful. Now we're in really good shape. In fact, in shape to show you how Heat 1A went.
In Heat 1A, the three fastest qualifiers were all drawn together. Miss Budweiser, the Appian Geronimo, and Steve David in the Miss Chrysler Jeep. It also meant that in every heat of racing so far in 1998, Steve David would be racing Dave Vilwalk in Miss Budweiser.
So here is how it went, and here is the Miss Budweiser unbeaten so far, and here is the big challenger at this point, Stephen David, in the Chrysler Jeep Prime Star. Appian Geronimo and Jerry Rice's boat, Mitch Evans at the helm. And we see the lineup. Master Tire, of course, is the only piston-powered boat with Mark Webber driving. And it is Ken Muscatello driving the Autobahn, filling out the five-boat field in Heat 1A. As they headed up for the start, Budweiser had grabbed the inside lane.
Even in the days of the flag starts, John, the Gold Cup was always a clock start here on the Detroit River. The drivers trying to be at start-finish exactly as the clock expires. Dave Vilwalk in great shape.
On board the Appian Geronimo, you can see the Budweiser rooster tail out ahead. Stephen David and the Appian Geronimo in a real good race for second place, and David in the Chrysler Jeep pulls ahead.
The Appian Geronimo team trying to sort out those brand new boat bugs as we go aboard Dave Vilwalk's Miss Budweiser. Nobody out ahead of him, John, as there seldom is.
Back on the dock, Nate Brown hoping his crew can get the Lumar window film together in time for Heat 1B. More about that in just a moment. But Dave Vilwalk cruising to victory in Heat 1A. That's 4 straight heat wins so far this year for Dave and the Big Red Machine. As we take a look at the checkered flag, and Dave off to the same kind of start that he had last year, in which he won his first 19 heats before turning over at Tri-City. So 400 points for Bud, 300 for Stephen David in the Miss Chrysler Jeep. Let's go to Steve with the winning owner.
Good start, Bernie.
Man, yeah. What's that? Can't win them all if you don't win that one. But seriously, that's rough out there. But I think they look real good.
So Budweiser throws down the challenge, and here is the guy who hopes to take it up, Mark Evans, top driver for the Pico American Dream Team, but not the only Pico driver this weekend. More on that from Steve.
You had to like Team Leland's chances in Heat 1B. All three of their boats drawn together. The only real question, had they solved the horsepower problems that had plagued them so far in the 98 season? We were about to find out.
Heat 1B started out with the Pico boats side by side. Here is the lineup as planned, but Nate Brown's team was not able to get the Lumar window film into the water, so was a scratch for Heat 1B. A legal start, but not a good start.
You could hear the gunfire, John, and the boats are still 1,500 feet from the start line, so the Pico team racing with each other, playing it a little conservative right here.
Mark Evans driving the Pico 96. Mark Tate driving the Pico 98. As we look from the O'Doul's eye in the sky and see Evans open to lead around the Belle Isle turn.
And a good sign already for the Pico team. Their boats appear to have the horsepower that was missing in Evansville.
On the other hand, problems for Carpenter Communications in this heat. Mike Weber's boat died in the water and he was out. This is the third Pico boat. The RS Easton Hotels presents Miss Bell Forklift with Rick Christensen driving in third place. Your winner, Heat 1B, was Mark Evans, taking it with Pico 96. So he's piled up the points also. 400 for Pico American Dream 96. That ties him with the Budweiser, which took 1A. And Steve talked with the winner.
Mark, you think the horsepower's back?
I think so. I think the guys worked hard last night. They stayed up all night and worked on my flaps and stuff, and we got the horsepower, so we'll get out there and get after that red boat and really see what we got.
So far, so good for Pico. That's one heat down, many more to go. We'll be back to Detroit. ESPN Speed World coverage of the APBA Gold Cup is brought to you by Ralph's, first in savings, first in Southern California. By Las Vegas, anything can happen and usually does when it comes to special events. And by O'Doul's non-alcoholic brew. It's what beer drinkers drink when they're not drinking beer.
This is the watch worn by Steve David in the cockpit of the Chrysler Jeep Prime Star boat. He hits this button just as the official 5-minute gun is sounded and it begins to count down. This clock and the big digital display on the start-finish tower would play a very large role in the running of Heat 2A.
As we look at the highlights, Budweiser on the inside next to Pico. Listen to the Budweiser communications as they head for the start.
10, 9, you're early, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Well, you heard it. You're going to be early, and indeed they were. Pico and then Budweiser, so each boat penalized a minute. That means the boat here on the right of your screen, Steve David, is the leader.
Mark Evans not only jumping the gun by about 4 seconds, which is like 400 yards, his rooster tail obscured the start-finish clock from Dave Villwalk, and the Bud went over the line too early with the Pico.
So at this point, they're not going to make up an entire minute in all likelihood, but they're going to run like heck anyway. But here is our leader in Heat 2A, Stephen David, just rocking along and trying to keep himself on plane and strong to take the 400 points. What an opportunity for him it was in this race. And then sure enough, coming around the rooster tail turn for the last time, Steve runs into some trouble. But he manages to get out of it and winds up winning Heat 2A. Again, they opened the door and he drove right through. And there is the dance of a very happy Stephen David on top of the Chrysler Jeep Prime Star. 700 points now after 2 heats for that team. That's the leading point getter, and Budweiser finishes way back, in fact, behind Pico American Dream.
Cool, dude.
When did you find out you were leading the race?
Oh, I knew those guys. Man, they were like 4 seconds over, you know. They're so scared of the Chrysler Jeep boat, they got to start a minute early, and they still can't catch us. You can't beat a Chrysler Jeep, you know what I mean?
Fact is, you can run with them if you get the right spot, huh?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, those guys are mincemeat. I'm telling you, come tomorrow, they're going to wish they'd never come to Detroit because Chrysler Jeep is going to win this thing. Bet on it. Okay.
Steve David, the master of understatement. Here is some serious talk going on between Commissioner Bill Donor, driver Dave Villwalk, and Budweiser crew chief Mark Smith. And Steve came in to find out just what the discussion was all about here over that last heat.
David, you thought you were on time?
There's something wrong with this, with the count systems. They can't seem to get the count. We go off of clocks to when the race has started, because many times we can't see the start clock. Pico jumped the gun by quite a ways. I couldn't see the clocks, the official clock, for my that, so I had to go off the boat clock and my radio guy, which is in a conversation with the UHRA about when the race was starting. That was about 2 seconds different. We adjusted ours. We were on the starting line, yet they still say we're over. There's no way we're over according to our count. But, you know, they got to have to get this straight. We look like a bunch of buffoons.
Good. Well, from one unhappy driver, here's a look at an unhappy owner, Jerry Rise, and his Appian Alamo team having a tough time so far this year, but had a big opportunity in Heat 2B. Let's go to Steve.
The draw for Heat 2B looked good for Mitch Evans and the Appian Geronimo. He would not have to deal with Dave Villwock or Steve David, but he would have Mark Tate in one of those very fast Pico boats, and as always, he would have to deal with Lady Luck.
At the start of Heat 2B, we checked the lineup and discovered that Carpenter Communications is in there, along with Miss Bell Forklift and the piston-powered Master Tire. A good start for the Appian Geronimo from our vantage point, the O'Doul's eye in the sky.
Mitch Evans is a very good driver, John, and the feeling for years has been that once he had a good ride, he would be there with the hot dogs, and now, finally, he has his equipment working well, puts his nose right on the line, and makes a great start here in this heat.
Rick Christensen here driving the Miss Bell Forklift, and as we move ahead in the highlights of Heat 2B, Mitch Evans had opened a huge lead in the Appian Geronimo, just flying the boat around the 3 laps.
You saw him getting some serious air right in front of the Detroit Yacht Club, one of the fastest points on the race course. That's about 200 miles per hour right there.
Closest boat to him just coming into view is Mark Tate driving the Pico 98. Dead in the water, Mike Weber and Carpenter Communications. More tough luck for the Lorian Mike Jones boat. And all of a sudden, however, tough luck for the Appian Geronimo. You're on board, here comes the splash, and that means we're slowing down big time.
That's parking, and that's not what he wants to be doing right now. He had a half a lap to go, John, to the first victory for that team in 1998.
So Mark Tate, who didn't have a ride a couple of days ago, just brought it right home in Pico 98 and took Heat 2B. The checkered flag for Mark Tate and the piston-powered Master Tire with Mark Weber got itself a third and finished 2 heats in a row. So Appian Geronimo finds itself down at the bottom on this particular heat. Pico American Dream with 625 points after 2 heats, and that's pretty good. Miss Bell Forklift right behind, and Master Tire 2 finishes in a row. Steve talked with Mark Tate.
We loved it. We loved it.
Mark, you went from spectator to the winner's circle. How does that feel?
Well, you know, it feels really great, and you know, I got to put a special thanks to Fred Leland, Jackie, and the Wisney family, and Progressive Tool for giving me this opportunity to race here this weekend, and pretty neat.
An emotional hometown guy, still wearing his last year's driving suit and helmet. No time for a new one. Lots of motors in the Pico camp. They'll be back with more from the Motor City next.
Welcome back to the Gold Cup in Detroit, Michigan, where gearboxes continue to be the Achilles heel in the Appian Geronimo camp. Now here's John with the setup for Heat 3A.
Having lost a heat for the first time this season and trailing in the overall points, Dave Villwock and Budweiser had to get back on track in Heat 3A. But Mark Evans and the Pico American Dream Team also wanted to make points.
And as they came around, Budweiser and Pico were side by side, getting very, very close. Here is your lineup also in the heat. Carpenter Communications, Lumar Window Film, and the Miss Bell Forklift. But those 2 boats side by side. The Pico running, by the way, without a cowling.
And running very, very well. You can see that his straightaway speed is matching that of Dave Villwock in the Budweiser as they come into the Belle Isle turn for the first time.
Watch how close these 2 boats get from the O'Doul's eye in the sky. Budweiser trying to pinch Evans in, and then Evans will come out and push Budweiser out as they come in toward the straightaway, and there they hit.
Now that's a close call because the inside boat determines the radius of the turn, but he's not allowed to take the boat outside him out further than is necessary. So the referees have a discussion at this time going on about that situation.
As it turned out, they decided to fine the Budweiser team and Villwock $300, but not give them any kind of a time penalty.
Meanwhile, a great boat race as these 2 guys are side by side. They are above 200 miles per hour at that point as they go by the Detroit Yacht Club.
Both banging them sponson to sponson as they go through the rollers there, and now we're in 5-lap heats now that we're in Heat 3.
Both getting good rides. You see the Pico walking a little bit, but that doesn't alarm the driver. He knows that he's running loose and fast when the boat is walking like that from sponson to sponson.
The Detroit River is always rough when you get into a situation of 5 laps plus the clock start, and there's Carpenter Communications, which went dead in the water during this heat. You really get rough water with each successive lap.
Now you see Dave Villwock carving a perfect turn in lane 2 as he goes through the Belle Isle turn again. He leaves room for the Pico because he doesn't have the overlap. If he were to move in and douse Mark Evans with his rooster tail,
like
now there,
that,
Evans chooses to come through the rooster tail, and without the cowling, the water put out the fire.
Pico just slowing down to go dead in the water at that point. And from that point on, it was Budweiser just rocking away.
The decision to run without the cowling, John, may have cost the Pico team right there.
On the other hand, had they taken the time to put the cowling on, they might not have been able to get it into this heat, so it was a calculated risk, and it did not work out. As Villwock began to run away with this heat, Steve talked with owner Bernie Little on the shore.
Bernie, it's Gold Cup Sunday. How's the heart doing?
Well, it's pumping pretty hard. I'll tell you, when you see him come through that first turn like that, God, they were all have to be at 200 miles an hour. I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. Dave just doing an awesome job of driving. I think he just took the checkered flag.
Indeed he did, and Dave Villwock back where he's used to being after losing his first heat of the year in Heat 2 is the winner of his Heat 3A. Nate Brown takes second in the Lumar window film, a pretty strong finish for him. And looking down the results, Carpenter Communications takes a third, but still trails in the overall standings after 3 heats.
David, a driver's race, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it sure was. Pico guys were trying real hard. He tried to push us around there a little bit, and we did a little rubbing and racing, but that's okay. You know, we still powered to miss Budweiser around the outside.
Bernie, there was never any doubt, was there?
The hell there wasn't. But I don't like to think there was. We're ready to win today, and he's showing us the way around the course.
There's a look at damage done to the Budweiser in that bump with the Pico American Dream. Nothing that this crew can't fix in a big hurry. And we're just about set now to go right to Heat 3B. Here's Steve to set it up.
After the running of Heats 1 and 2, Steve David in Miss Chrysler Jeep Prime Star led the entire field in points, despite the fact they had drawn Dave Villwock and the Miss Budweiser in every heat so far in 1998. Now, finally, in Heat 3B of the Gold Cup, no red rocket.
But there was an APBA in Geronimo for Steve David to contend with, and he had to have that in mind as they counted down toward the start on the big clock and on the wristwatches all around the course. Steve David, an experienced clock start guy, should help him out. Here is how the lineup set up with Steve in the Pico American Dream 98. Mark Tate, you can't count him out. Ken Muscatel also in this heat with the audio bond.
Mark Tate got pushed way to the outside, and going into that big Belle Isle turn, that's not where you want to be. The race is on the inside. You can see the black and yellow boat. That is Steve David right to his left. You're right, the APBA in Geronimo, and that would be the speed here early in the heat as they carve a beautiful turn through that big sweeping Belle Isle curve.
That is about as close a bit of racing as you're going to see as they come right toward you now down the backstretch in front of the Detroit Yacht Club. Just a beautiful setup here.
You know, you could be coming here for a long time and you won't remember the Detroit River being as smooth as it was in that shot right there. And look at these two veterans hooking it up sponson to sponson, coming by the Detroit Yacht Club. And again, John, they are above the 200-mile-per-hour mark. That is one of the fastest points we'll see in the entire circuit all year.
There's the APBA Geronimo crew cheering on Mitch Evans as he holds the inside. And now the crew is not watching that race anymore. There's Tim Ramsey, crew chief, popping up. We'll show you in just a moment what he saw. Back in the race on the inside, Mitch Evans on the outside. Stephen David from this angle. David appears to have a slight lead, but again, the shorter course at this point for Mitch Evans on the inside.
Steve David appearing to have a little bit of straightaway speed on the APBA in Geronimo as he goes into the Belle Isle turn, and now he's established just a bit of a lead after more than a lap, so that's a very close race.
So as Steve David extended the lead, now we're going to see what everybody was looking at a moment ago. There's a buoy on the front of the Pico 98, and here is how it got there. Watch Tate come in from the left side of your screen and swing way wide, pick up the buoy here just a couple of feet from the grandstand.
And that orange you see in the center of your picture is cement, John. He missed it by inches, and that's indeed what the APBA team was watching because he came close to the pit area.
Combination of luck and skill that Tate escaped being badly hurt. Steve David went on to win the heat, picking up another 400 points and maintaining the overall points lead. Master tire with Mark Webber finished third, although it was almost lapped, and an accomplishment finishing 3 heats in a row. Piston-powered team, of course, has had some trouble so far this season. APBA and Geronimo still running hard on the right side of your screen, now coming to the center because it had been determined to have hit a buoy and wound up finishing 4th in Heat 3B. Still, Mitch Evans and the APBA finished a heat, and that was quite an accomplishment. Speaking of which, an accomplishment for Ken Muscatel, who wound up 2nd as we checked the results. But for APBA, this was nice to finish.
Is that better, boss?
Well, the boat ran good. The setup we had wasn't fast enough, and we think we know what to do. But they claim we hit a buoy out there, and Mitch said he didn't, so we're going to have to go look at the film and see.
But it went fast all the way back to the dock.
Yeah, that's the important part. We did get out there, got a good start, you know, and ran all 5 laps. So the boat set up well. We're just going to have to keep working on it a little bit more.
3 heats down, 1 to go before the final. We'll be back with a head-to-head matchup between the leaders next.
Welcome back to Detroit and the running of the 1998 Gold Cup. Dave Vilwalk and Steve David compared notes before the running of Heat 4A.
3 boats dropped out of Heat 4A before the start, including APBA and Geronimo, which then hoped to make the final by the consolation route. That left one-on-one between the 2 top point getters, Chrysler, Jeep, and Miss Budweiser. What shaped up as a heck of a head-to-head battle. Or not.
The truth of the matter is the only thing at stake here would be personal pride. Budweiser got to the inside before the start, and if Budweiser grabbed that start lead, no great reason for Steve David to try to catch up.
This is what the field was supposed to look like, but only the Budweiser and the Chrysler Jeep answered the call. Steve David, we've talked about him being a great starter. This was not one of his best. He swung to the outside, lost some time. The Budweiser made a good start, and that really was the story of Heat 4A, John.
Steve David, in fact, had the points lead coming in because Budweiser jumped the gun a couple of heats ago. And even if Steve David were to come in 2nd here, as he did, he would still have the points lead going into the final. So from the O'Doul's eye in the sky, we take a look at how smoothly Dave Vilwalk ran the course here in the Budweiser. Nobody took any chances in this one.
At this point, Steve David wisely decides just to stay out of trouble. We're looking out the front of the Budweiser. That canard or wing there is adjustable. As Dave moves it with his left foot, he can lift the nose of the boat a little bit when it gets heavy in the turns, and he can fly it a little bit in the straightaways if he wants to lighten the boat up.
The frustrated Dr. Ken Muscatel looking on, saying, yeah, very impressive, but I wish I were out there in my boat. Well, he will be in the final. A little bit of concern for the Budweiser team in this heat was a trail of blue smoke coming out. Bernie Little looking very intense there, as he always does, and maybe that's why. He wants to know what is going on with that blue smoke. But Dave Vilwalk takes Heat 4A, picks up another 400 points along with a checkered flag, and is set for the confrontation with Steve David and the other boats in the final. The crew, of course, will check that out as we check out the overall results. Miss Chrysler Jeep still with the points lead, but it is a winner-take-all final. And Steve talked with the winner of this heat.
Dave, a tough heat and then an easy one, but did you know about the blue smoke?
Oh, well, there's a new motor. We had a lot of oil in it, so we're just trying to turn on the afterburner a little bit, I think.
What do you learn in a heat like that? Just cruising easy?
Well, we're just trying to, you know, we had to run hard. Steve David's one of the fastest guys here right now. Jim Harvey and those guys have done a tremendous job with that Prime Star boat. So to keep Budweiser out in front of them, we're going to have to push really hard through the first half a lap or so, and then we just tried to settle in and you know, keep everything consistent.
Who else will make the final? How about Mark Evans? He's getting set for Heat 4B. So is Mark Tate. And our Speed World coverage from the Detroit River continues in a moment. Welcome back to Detroit. John Nicholson with Steve Montgomery. We are bringing you the Gold Cup, and there is the crowd in front of the historic Detroit Yacht Club, the home of the Gold Cup, and quite a crowd it is on both shores of the Detroit River. You know, the Gold Cup is just full of heritage, and that brings us to this week's Alamo Almanac. Today's Alamo Almanac is brought to you by Alamo Rent-A-Car. It's drive happy time again. Ready, set, go.
Well, John, you saw the historic Detroit Yacht Club, the home of Garwood, who brought the cup there long before this man. Guy Lombardo won the race in 1946. The band leader driving his boat he called Tempo 6. He would go on to own Tempo 7 and eventually sold Bernie Little his first unlimited hydroplane. In 1955, Lee Shanath shocked the Seattle hydroplane fans by winning the Gold Cup and taking it back to Detroit, despite the fact that he did not win the final heat. Yes, the rules have changed in the Gold Cup, partially because of that victory by Lee Shaneth in the Gale 5. We move ahead to 1969. The driver is Bill Sterrett. The boat is Miss Budweiser. It is Bernie Little's first ever Gold Cup on Mission Bay in San Diego, a winning speed of 98.5 miles per hour. Moving ahead 20 years. It's 1989 and the field is mixed, turbines and pistons. Here, George Woods in the Oh Boy Oberto with piston power battles a turbine-powered Tommy Deeth and the Miss Budweiser, who actually ran out of fuel short of the checkered flag. The boat then responded, rose back up on a plane, and carried Tom to victory, denying this man, Chip Hanauer, his 8th consecutive Gold Cup. 1995 found Chip Hanauer driving for Bernie Little. Both were seeking their 10th Gold Cup, and both would reach that historic mark on this day. Right here on this very same Detroit River racecourse, the Budweiser team would raise the fabled Gold Cup as they have so many times.
The Alamo Almanac has been sponsored by Alamo, where renting a car is fun. Let Alamo put you smiles ahead with Drive Happy deals and services. The boat's now pulling out for Heat 4B. The clock is rolling here in the Detroit River. This is the last preliminary heat before we get to the final. And look at this. Mark Tate's Pico 98 just now coming down off the crane. That could be trouble, Steve.
They are very late getting into the water. Things are going to have to go very smoothly for them. The rule, John, is that you have to be up on a plane and running at the firing of the 1-minute gun. That was not it. That's the 5-minute gun, but they are a little bit late.
3 boats still at the dock. Here is one of only 2 out on the water. Nate Brown driving the Lumar window film. Had some troubles earlier, but now seems to be up and running well.
Meanwhile, back at the dock, Mark Tate getting in, but they are still working on his boat. We see crewmen up on the right front sponson. They are working on the controls for the front wing, and the boat certainly wouldn't be competitive without that wing, so they have to get it fixed.
The clock countdown is relentless. There is no time to spare for any of these 3 boats still at the dock, but particularly for Mark Tate and his crew.
The other 2 appear to be on a fairly normal starting sequence, although they are about a minute behind where they would like to be, particularly that Carpenter Communications team. They like to come out early in case Mike Weber has any problems getting up on a plane. The yellow boat, the Lumar, John, we've mentioned the fact their crew had a long weekend. They broke a motor in qualifying on Friday. Some pieces went through the bottom of the boat, did a lot of damage. They were up all night, did not make the preliminary heats on Saturday. Believe me, they are thrilled to be out here running for the final heat.
Here goes the Carpenter Communications now out onto the course with Mike Weber in the cockpit, the Laurie and Mike Jones boat, which has also had its difficulties.
This boat runs very well, John. They won a heat in Evansville. They've looked good and strong at times today. For some reason, this boat is hard to get up on a plane, no matter who the driver is. And it looks now like Mike Weber is going to get it unhooked and get it up on top, and he'll be out here for the running of Heat 4B.
Mike, one of 3 Weber brothers driving the Unlimiteds and Unlimited Lights. His brother Mark will be in this heat driving the Miss Bell forklift. Rick Christensen hurt some ribs in an earlier heat. The master tire, which Mark Weber was driving, is out, and here he is now in the Miss Bell forklift. So he'll drive it for at least this heat, and then we'll see.
Give you an idea how rough the Detroit River can be. Rick Christensen actually dislocated a shoulder and damaged some ribs in what was not even an accident, just a bumpy spot in the river.
Mark Evans we saw a moment ago as we look at this beautiful course from the O'Doul's Eye in the Sky.
And one of the crewmen still hanging on to Mark Tate's boat, the second Pico. Now finally a good sign as the crew is getting off with 2:45 to go, and that's a good sign. They may be with us here for 4B, and they need the points to get into the final.
May is the key word. Will they join the other boats? We'll find out when we come back to our Speed World coverage of the Gold Cup. Welcome back to Detroit. John Nicholson, Steve Montgomery here for the Gold Cup. There's the answer to your question. Will Mark Tate make it? No. He got onto the course, but not up on plane. We're under a minute to go, so here is the rest of the lineup. Pico American Dream 98 will not be in Heat 4B here in Detroit. The rest of the boats heading for the start line now, trying to hit the clock right at 0. We have 5 seconds to go.
Nate Brown between the 2 Picos and his yellow Lumar has it running well. The gun fires, a very conservative start, and look who's leading. Mike Weber in the Carpenter Communications made a great start.
This has got to be a good deal of excitement for Mark Webber and none at all for Mark Tate, who just cruises off to the side to get out of the way.
The field coming right toward you. That's our camera on the Belle Isle Bridge showing you the boat on the inside. Mike Weber, the Carpenter Communications, our O'Doul's eye in the sky. You can see Nate Brown in the Lumar trying to get around Mike, and this is going to be a good boat race right up front.
They came very close together coming around that Belle Isle Bridge turn, and now Lumar gives Weber some space.
A little bit of an advantage, of course, for the boat on the inside. He has a shorter race course, and the boat on the outside, the Lumar, has a little better boat speed. So this could be a very good matchup. And look at Nate Brown. He really has the yellow boat running well. And now here comes Weber again in the Carpenter Communications through this very, very tight rooster tail turn.
Both doing a nice job coming around the rooster tail turn. It looked like Weber might have lost it just a little, but now tries to make it up as he maintains the inside lane.
This Gold Cup course on the Detroit River, John, kind of egg-shaped. It has the biggest turn on the circuit at one end, the tightest, the rooster tail turn at the other, and Nate Brown negotiated both of them at 146.891 miles per hour.
Cooking right along, and Nate Brown is your leader in the Lumar window film. Bill Wooster's boat making its first appearance of this season here in Detroit at the Gold Cup.
Really hard to explain the relief this team has right now because they have had a very long weekend. Some of those guys haven't slept for about 3 days, and to have their boat out ahead right now will make it all worthwhile.
Pico American Dream 98 with Mark Tate, as we saw earlier, not making the start. Lumar opening up the lead now over the second place Mike Weber.
Coming by the Detroit Yacht Club, and Nate has it up and walking nicely. He can move over to the inside now. He has the overlap over Mike Weber, but Mike is hanging in there right on the buoy line, and that's where he has to be if he's going to challenge Nate.
And if he is, he's got one lap to do it in. The white flag indicating they're coming up on the final of the 5 laps in Heat 4B.
We don't use the phrase straightaways here in Detroit because the stretches are not straight. They have a kind of a kink in the middle, forming that egg shape, and that illusion might have made it look like Mike Weber had gone to the outside of the Lumar. Actually, he's still on the inside. Once again, our O'Doul's eye in the sky, showing you this beautiful shot as Nate leaves just a lane to his left.
Again, we see in the 5th lap how rough the water becomes with all the boats churning it up, both before the clock start and then going around 5 times. About 142.5 miles an hour the last time around for Mike Weber in the Carpenter Communications. Not bad at all, but not quite as fast as Nate Brown in the Lumar window film.
And the Carpenter now has swung to the outside. Mike Weber deciding that perhaps discretion is the better part of valor. He'll be very happy with second place here.
He would like to be in the final, and he wants the boat to be in good shape. But this has got to be a terrific feeling for Nate Brown and the entire Bill Wooster crew. There's the checkered flag for Nate Brown, the first one he has taken this year. And Mike Weber in the Carpenter Communications comes in second in this Heat 4B, and we'll check the results. The order of finish is what you see here in that heat. The total points is the total for all 4 heats to this point. Let's go down to the dock now. Steve is with the winner, Nate Brown of Lumar Window Film.
I think they call it from the outhouse to the penthouse, huh?
I guess, you know. It was fun getting a heat win for Lumar Window Films, you know. What can you say? I know the trick. What I did that time, it's so sunny here in Detroit, I put some of that Lumar Window Film on the canopy, and I could see great, man. It was wonderful.
Pretty good boat ride.
It was okay. It was okay.
Now, does this boat look a little different to you? It's an unlimited light, so is this one. And they're going to have their championship when we come back to Detroit on Speed World coverage of the Gold Cup. Welcome back to Detroit. The Unlimited Lights coming around the bend toward the start of their final here in the Gold Cup. Automotive engines in these boats, slightly smaller, not quite as fast, but man, they will still go 170 plus in the straightaways as you check the starting lineup. Watch Bo Scheid here. Watch Charlie Wiggins in high pressure. He is the man who won a couple of weeks ago in Evansville in the first Unlimited Light title of the year. Slowly getting up to the line there early, Steve.
As always, have to watch the two yellow boats, the Alamo on the inside, George Stratton on the outside. The Wildfire has a new sponsor, John.
Amcor and Bullock Insulation, York Heating and Air. Wildfire almost all yellow. There's blue trim, of course, on the Alamo. And coming around from our view in the O'Doul's Eye in the Sky, you see Dennis Macy in the Cape Canaveral getting mighty close to the buoys.
Dennis in the bright red boat runs very fast and loose. A lot of fun to watch, and he's going to challenge on the inside. That's George Stratton, who has taken the early lead. A very good start, and this boat, always a contender, may be on his way to his first victory of the year.
He's built up a pretty good lead so far, but he's got a long way to go in this race where even more so it seems sometimes in the Unlimiteds, anything can happen. The referees are taking a look at Dennis Macy. There could be some trouble in store for him because of the way that he is driving. I mentioned a moment ago, as we watch from the O'Doul's Eye in the Sky, very close to the buoys. We see it again there.
We also see the Alamo working his way around the outside. He got back in the Rooster Tails at the start and started back in 5th or 6th place. Now Bo Scheid has the yellow Alamo up and running pretty good. As we look at Dennis Macy, understand that he may be in some problems with the officials, John.
In fact, we now have the word that Dennis Macy has been disqualified. So he's going to run, but he is going to be out. We just saw Bo Scheid get by Randy Haas and the Miss Leroy. Now can he catch up to George Stratton in the Amcor and Bullock Insulation York Heating and Air?
We see him going around Dennis Macy, and now Stratton's boat. Oh, what a heartbreak. He had about 3/4 of a lap to go. He has lost the engine, and now Bo Scheid in the Alamo goes by him, and Scheid had to pass about 5 boats to get up here into first place.
We're on board with Bo, and you can see it is clear racing ahead right now. He went by George Stratton as if he were sitting still, because he was.
Cruising to victory now, and Ned Allen and his team will notch another checkered flag victory unless something happens in this last quarter of a lap.
Dennis Macy here in a duel with Randy Haas and Miss Leroy. Dennis has been disqualified, but he's going to keep right on running hard. Right to the finish line, which Bo Scheid has crossed. There he comes across your screen. Then Randy Haas and Miss Leroy will take second. We check the official results, and only 3 boats officially finish. Cal Phipps in 3rd place is the 3rd. Let's go to Steve with the winning Bo Scheid.
Bo, that's a little different for you. You had to work your way up through the field.
Yeah, I did. I was wanted to make sure that I was good on the start, and it was real rough, and just had to work real hard and got caught up in the first turn, but we tried to pick our way back, and there was a great boat out front, and didn't know if I could catch him or not, but he broke, so I just kind of settled down a little bit to take the win. We don't like it that way, but a victory is a victory on the Detroit River.
Last year's champion for the Unlimited Lights gets his first win of this year. Who will get the Gold Cup win in the Unlimiteds? The contenders are strapping in. We'll be back. Welcome back to Detroit. John Nicholson, Steve Montgomery bringing you the Gold Cup coverage. And as the boats get set, we're near the 5-minute mark to the start right here. Set your clock for next week when we'll bring you the hydros from Willoughby Bay in Norfolk, Virginia. That's at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN2. Now, under the 5 minutes to the start, and the boats are getting out on the water.
Large field now pulling out from the historic Detroit Gold Cup pit area. This boat right here has to be kept out of lane 1, John, if anybody has any chance of winning this heat other than Dave Villwalk. We thought we'd see a whole bunch of Pico boats. Fred Leland has withdrawn 2 of them, so Mark Evans will be representing that team all by himself.
Dave Villwalk has lost just the 1 heat so far this year. Here is Dr. Ken Muscatel in the Autobahn, who's had a very good weekend so far. His boat running pretty well this season.
The world's fastest forensic psychologist. We've talked about how happy this team is just to be running after their problems on Friday. And Nate Brown and the Lumar team have shown they can run very, very fast, as can this guy.
This team right now is the overall points leader. Steve David ahead of Dave Villwalk in the Chrysler Jeep is Steve.
Ken Muscatel won a heat in Evansville, hasn't had a great weekend here. Mike Weber has driven the Carpenter Communications very well. He the oldest of the 3 racing. Weber brothers. Still well over 3 minutes to the start. A little too early here to be setting any lanes, but the strategy has already begun. If Steve David and the Chrysler Jeep is to have any chance of competing with the Budweiser, they have to be inside the red boat.
When they met head-to-head in Heat 4A, Dave Villwock grabbed the lead off the start, and it pretty much became a parade after that.
A lot of the discussion among the experts and spectators as well during qualifying and the preliminary heats was the fact that Fred Leland could have 3 boats in the final heat. What kind of teamwork could take place there? Fred kind of surprised us all with the decision to just run the 1 boat. So Mark Evans will not have any help from Mark Tate or Rick Christensen here in the final heat.
Dave Villwock now in the big red boat, the Miss Budweiser, looking for the advantage as we watch from the O'Doul's eye in the sky. He cuts across the infield and heads back for the inside lane. Again, we are still nearly 3 minutes away from the start, but the strategy goes second by second.
And look, he's coming up on a Pico American Dream, which is not underway. And if Mark Evans can't get that boat up and running soon, that team may be out of this final heat. There he is struggling to get it started. If we don't have a Pico, that's going to change the face of this final a great deal.
He has got 1 minute and 25 seconds to get that boat back up on plane. ESPN Speed World coverage of the APBA Gold Cup has been brought to you by Rouse. First in savings, first in Southern California. By Las Vegas, anything can happen and usually does when it comes to special events. And by O'Doul's non-alcoholic brew. It's what beer drinkers drink when they're not drinking beer. Welcome back to Detroit. 42 seconds to go to the start of the Gold Cup Championship. John Nicholson with Steve Montgomery and the boats again dicing for position. We look at the starting lineup. Mark Evans is no longer in it. Could not get the Pico up on plane before 1 minute ago.
Just above the graphic, you saw the yellow boat, Nate Brown in the Lumar, sneak out of the infield and plant himself in lane 1. Now, will that be enough of an advantage to give him a shot at the Budweiser? We'll have to see. Steve David and the Chrysler Jeep is outside the red boat.
Budweiser edging just ahead of Steve David as we count down 8 seconds to the start. The very aggressive Nate Brown now has grabbed the inside lane.
Looked like a legal start, and Dave Villwock had it wired. Nate Brown is on the inside, back just a bit in the Lumar. He'll have a smaller first turn, and we'll see if that helps.
I have to say, he does not have the power to beat the Budweiser head-to-head, so it's going to take some really clever driving by Nate Brown to get up there with Dave Villwock. Steve David right now is coming around in second place to the outside. A tough run for him, too. Brown very close inside there, and the buoys as we watch from the O'Doul's eye in the sky.
Nate Brown's position in lane 1 is keeping him ahead of Steve David for the moment. That race for second place. Now the leader, you're on board with Dave Villwock, operating that front canard just a bit as he flies the Budweiser out to the front of the pack in the final heat of the 1998 Gold Cup.
As Villwock passes the Budweiser crew, confident but intent, both he and they. Now Steve David flying his boat, trying to catch up in this rough water in front of the grandstand. Heading past the start-finish line for the first time. Coming around the outside, left side of your screen, Ken Muscatel in the Autobahn.
This shot kind of belies the fact that those boats are coming at you at just about 200 miles per hour. Steve David and the Chrysler Jeep was back a bit, didn't make a bad start, but the one by Dave Villwock and the Budweiser was spectacular. So far, that's been the story of this final heat.
Villwock paid earlier in this meet by jumping the gun, the only heat he has lost so far this year, but he got it just right this time. And as you said before the start, Steve, once Budweiser gets a good start, everybody else is just praying that something happens to catch up.
You saw just about a 2 rooster tail advantage for the Budweiser as Dave Villwock came by the Detroit Yacht Club. Steve David has settled into second place. Nate Brown still giving chase in the Lumar. And you have the driver's perspective there of a rather rough Detroit River at this point in the afternoon.
Nate Brown holding the inside lane, but now losing contact with the Budweiser, trying to keep up somehow, at least with Steve David in the Chrysler Jeep. But Steve has got a lead, although outside.
141.842 miles per hour. That's a good, fast, competitive lap for the Budweiser. They could go faster, John, if they had to. He knows very well where the competition is right now.
There's a familiar view from on board in the Budweiser cockpit. Nothing in terms of other boats except way ahead lap traffic. Rooster Tails, is he in fact easing up a little?
Well, this boat qualified at 160 miles per hour plus. He could run in the 150s easily in competition, but you have to run all 5 laps, John. If you don't make it to the checkered flag, you might as well have not started the race. So Dave Villwock is definitely being a little bit careful here, but even at this speed, it's a pretty rough ride on the Detroit River.
Dave Villwock loves to drive boats. After his accident in Tri-Cities last year, people talking to Dave's wife, Pam, said, you know, I thought he'd never drive again. And she said, I never thought that.
And this young man, as we have pointed out many times in the broadcast, has had a difficult weekend and will be thrilled with a top 3 finish. Nate Brown in the Lumar window film. Dave slows it down just a bit more, 137 plus miles per hour on that lap.
Budweiser with the big lead. Steve David is in second. Then here the yellow boat, Nate Brown in the Lumar window film. Ken Muscatel, and bringing up the rear is Mike Weber. Coming around the Rooster Tail turn for the final time, Dave Villwock in the big red Miss Budweiser and heading for the finish line and his 3rd consecutive Gold Cup championship as a driver. There's the checkered flag. The Budweiser has done it again. This is Dave's 2nd win in a row in the Bud. He won 2 years ago in the Pico. And there, of course, is the happy Budweiser crew. A good finish for Steve David in the Miss Chrysler GP 2nd. Dr. Ken Muscatel coming around. Looks like he will finish 4th in the Autobahn, because 3rd place goes to this boat. Nate Brown driving the Lumar window film. We check the results of the championship here in the Detroit Gold Cup and find Miss Budweiser in its customary place on top. Miss Chrysler Jeep just behind. And the O'Doul's High Point standings after 2 events for this year. Budweiser has the lead, and Steve Montgomery has the winner.
David,
Awesome.
wow. 3 straight Gold Cups put you in some pretty lofty company. How does that feel?
Feels like I couldn't have done it with this group and this team. Mark Smith, headed by Bernie Little, who is on our top, and Lauren Sawyer, who put all the guys together to, get all these boats looking like they do. They had to repair it today. I broke it, but they went out there and gave me the best, absolute best boat ride anybody has ever had going into a 20-mile-an-hour wind. We wanted a 12-pack in the worst way.
That's right. That was some good racing out there. I'm sorry Pico wasn't involved, because that would have made it even better.
Okay.
Yep.
So congratulations to Bernie Little on his 12th Gold Cup, and to Dave Villwock on his 3rd in a row. Stay on the inside track of the UHRA by becoming a member of the Winner's Circle. Just call the number on your screen. Promotional consideration for this broadcast has been provided by Motorola Racing Radios and by Bruce Coach Custom Conversions, official motor coach of the UHRA. For Steve Montgomery, I'm John Nicholson saying so long from Detroit.